They were born in an era of flappers, jazz, and roaring factories. Machines forged in the 1920s when steel was thick, bolts were heavy, and engineers built for eternity, not obsolescence. These mechanical titans rolled out of workshops powered by coal and sweat, never meant to see a world of satellites and smartphones. And yet, they're still here. A century later, they grind, churn, and roar with the same defiant energy they were born with. But how did these ancient giants survive the rise of automation, the fall of empires, and the march of modern technology? What kind of engineering sorcery made them outlast the companies that built them, and sometimes even the men who designed them? This is the untold story of machines that refused to die, relics that outlasted time itself. Number 12. Bucyrus 50. B. Steam shovel, 1920. The earth mover that built America. In the dawn of the 1920s, as the world shook off the dust of war and reached for the promise of industry, one machine rose above the clamor of factories and railroads, a towering steel beast that would carve the bones of modern America. It was the Bucyrus 50B steam shovel, a relic of smoke and fire, a mechanical colossus that ate mountains and laid the foundations of cities. Born from the forges of Bucyrus, Erie, a company already legendary for its work on the Panama Canal, the 50B was built not for finesse but for brute strength. Its massive boom, forged from thick riveted steel, stretched like the arm of a titan. Its bucket, capable of swallowing 5 cubic yards of earth in a single bite, was powered by the raw fury of steam, a furnace-fed heart that hissed and roared with every movement. To see a 50B at work was to witness the industrial age in full glory. Its gears groaned, its pistons thumped, and plumes of black smoke curled into the sky as it tore into the ground with unrelenting hunger. These machines didn't just move Earth, they reshaped the landscape, one scoop at a time. From the coal mines of Appalachia to the iron pits of Minnesota, from dam projects to railway cuts, the 50B was everywhere the earth needed to be conquered. It dug canals, quarried stone, and cleared the paths for highways and skyscrapers. Entire towns rose from the soil it displaced. In the Roaring '20s, if America was being built, chances were a Bucyrus shovel was on the job. What set the 50B apart wasn't just its power, it was its endurance. Crafted in an era when over-engineering was a virtue, its riveted frame and cast-iron guts could withstand decades of punishment. Maintenance was simple, parts were robust, and its steam systems, though archaic, were astonishingly resilient. And resilience is exactly what defined it. When the Great Depression came, when diesel replaced steam, when automation began to creep into the mines, the 50B refused to bow. Some were converted to diesel or electric power. Others were left as is, still burning coal, still hissing through the decades. A century later, a few of these giants still stand, some fully operational, lovingly restored by collectors and heritage quarries. One still works in Quebec, scooping gravel just as it did in 1920, its steel frame blackened by time but unbroken in spirit. The Bucyrus 50B didn't just dig holes, it dug history. It carved the highways of progress, sculpted the arteries of industry, and set the stage for every excavator and haul truck that followed. In every hiss of its boiler and clang of its bucket echoes the heartbeat of an era that believed machines could outlive men. And sometimes they were right. The Bucyrus 50B, the earth mover that built America and never stopped. Number 11. Fairbanks Morse Model Z engine, 1920, the farmer's eternal engine. In the quiet fields of rural America, long before the hum of tractors and the buzz of electronics filled the air, there was a different sound. The steady, rhythmic chug of an engine that refused to quit. Born in 1920, the Fairbanks Morse Model Z was more than just a machine. It was the heartbeat of the early 20th century farm, a stoic companion forged in cast iron and purpose, built to serve through dust, drought, and decades. Fairbanks Morse, a company with roots deep in America's industrial soil, designed the Model Z not for spectacle, but for survival. It was a stationary engine built to power the lifeblood of rural life. from water pumps and grain grinders to sawmills, conveyors, and generators. In an age before widespread electrification, this single machine could transform a farm from labor-bound to mechanized, replacing the muscle of men and mules with the constant strength of combustion. The Model Z's design was a triumph of simplicity and endurance. Its cast-iron frame was thick and unyielding, its flywheels massive, and its governor-driven throttle ensured an unhurried, steady rhythm that seemed almost alive. Running on gasoline, kerosene, or distillate fuel, it could adapt to whatever a farmer could afford, starting by hand crank and settling into a deep, meditative pulse that echoed across fields. Farmers often said that once a Model Z started running, you could leave it alone all day. It would not falter, it would not complain. But what truly set it apart was its longevity. Unlike many machines that came and went with shifting technologies, the Model Z endured because it was designed to be repaired, not replaced. Every bolt, gasket, and gear was accessible. Every failure could be fixed with basic tools and know-how. It became a symbol of independence for early 20th century America, a promise that even in isolation, a farmer could harness power on his own terms. As the decades rolled by and the world modernized, the Model Z never truly disappeared. When rural electrification swept across the nation in the 1930s and 1940s, many engines were retired to barns or fence lines, yet thousands survived, their thick iron shells resisting rust, their internals still ready to fire with a bit of oil and fuel. In some remote farms and workshops, they never stopped working at all. Today, more than a century after its debut, hundreds of Model Z engines remain operational, some still running daily in small-scale farms, others lovingly restored by collectors who marvel at their timeless utility. At antique engine shows across America, you'll find them chugging steadily, drawing crowds with their hypnotic cadence, a living echo of a world built on patience and durability. The Fairbanks Morse Model Z wasn't fast, flashy, or famous, but it was faithful. It powered a generation through change, weather, and hardship, and in its unending rhythm, it carried the spirit of the farmer, steady, enduring, and eternal. The farmer's eternal engine, still chugging, still alive, still refusing to rust. Number 10. Ruston and Hornsby. Oil engine, 1922. Britain's iron heart. In the industrial landscape of post-war Britain, where soot hung thick in the air and progress was measured in horsepower and smoke, one machine emerged as the quiet pulse of reconstruction, the Ruston and Hornsby oil engine, a masterpiece of engineering resilience that would become the iron heart of an empire rebuilding itself from the ruins of the Great War. When it first rolled out of the company's Lincoln Works in 1922, the oil engine was not merely a product of its time, it was a promise of endurance in an uncertain age. Britain's industries, farms, and ports demanded power that could be trusted in every corner of the empire, from the fog-laden fields of Yorkshire to the far-flung colonies where electricity was a distant dream. The Ruston and Hornsby answered that call with a machine built not for comfort or convenience, but for permanence. A slow-revving, cast-iron sentinel designed to run day and night, year after year, with nothing but basic care and a steady supply of fuel. At its core lay the essence of practical British engineering, a single-cylinder oil engine, fueled by heavy distillates that other machines could not tolerate, ignited through careful compression and fired with rhythmic precision. Its massive flywheels turned with the weight of inevitability, each revolution a testament to mechanical patience. And while it lacked the drama of steam or the modernity of electricity, it possessed something far more valuable: unflinching reliability. The oil engine powered pumps in distant farms, sawmills along rural rivers, and generators in factories that stitched the fabric of a recovering nation. It drove winches at docks, mills in the Midlands, and lighting plants in towns still cloaked in gaslight. Wherever labor was heavy and margins were thin, the Ruston and Hornsby was there, a silent partner in the work of rebuilding. What made it truly extraordinary, however, was its longevity. Crafted from heavy castings and built with tolerances that forgave wear and weather, it was a machine meant to endure generations. Mechanics who serviced them often spoke of units that had never missed a season, their pistons still pumping steadily after 50, 60, even 70 years of labor. Many engines were passed down like heirlooms, repainted, refitted, and restarted countless times, each one carrying the marks of the hands that had kept it alive. Today, a century after their birth, hundreds of Ruston and Hornsby oil engines still run, some powering irrigation pumps in the British countryside, others showcased at vintage rallies where their rhythmic thump draws crowds of enthusiasts who marvel at their simplicity and strength. They stand as living monuments to an age when machines were expected not to innovate, but to endure, when the measure of greatness was not complexity, but character. The Ruston and Hornsby oil engine remains, to this day, a living relic of Britain's industrial soul, a heart forged in iron, still beating a century later. Number 9. Caterpillar 20 Tractor, 1927, the little tractor that never quit. In the roaring 1920s, a decade of invention, optimism, and relentless expansion, most machines were built for speed, spectacle, and scale. But in the quiet fields of California and the windswept plains of the Midwest, a smaller revolution was taking shape, one that favored endurance over excitement and purpose over prestige. At its heart stood the Caterpillar 20, a compact crawler tractor born in 1927, whose unassuming frame would outlast empires, depressions, and entire generations of machines that came and went like passing seasons. When Caterpillar Tractor Company introduced the 20, it was answering a desperate need among farmers and builders for a machine that could deliver dependable power without the fragility or excess of early mechanization. The era was shifting away from horses and steam. Gasoline and diesel were rewriting the rules of labor. Yet many small operations could not afford the massive, temperamental tractors built for industrial-scale farms. They needed something simpler, a workhorse that could start in the cold, crawl over mud, and labor tirelessly from dawn to dusk. The Caterpillar 20 was the perfect answer. Equipped with a 20-horsepower gasoline engine, mounted on a rugged steel crawler chassis, it was built to grip terrain that would swallow wheeled tractors whole. Its compact design allowed it to plow narrow rows, haul heavy implements, and traverse slopes and bogs that had long resisted mechanized farming. It was small, but it was mighty, and its genius lay not in extravagance but in the quiet perfection of its engineering. Its track-driven undercarriage, a direct descendant of military and industrial traction experiments, gave it unmatched stability and traction. The engine, though modest in size, was built with the same care Caterpillar reserved for its larger models: precision-cast blocks, durable bearings, and a cooling system designed to survive the harshest summers. Farmers soon discovered that once the 20 was fueled and oiled, it would simply never stop. Rain, mud, or frost, it soldiered on with the patience of an ox and the discipline of a machine that seemed almost alive. Through the Great Depression, when many tractors were abandoned in fields or repossessed by banks, the Caterpillar 20 kept working because it had to. It tilled fields, hauled timber, cleared roads, and powered the hopes of families clinging to the land. And long after newer, flashier models appeared, the 20 continued to serve, rebuilt, repainted, refitted, its heart still beating with the steady rhythm of progress. Nearly a century later, countless Caterpillar 20s remain in operation, lovingly restored by collectors or still quietly laboring in rural corners of the world. Their steel tracks, worn smooth by decades of toil, tell stories of seasons turned and lives sustained. The Caterpillar 20 may have been small, but it embodied the enduring spirit of the machine age, practical, indestructible, and faithful beyond expectation, a little tractor that never quit, because quitting was never in its design. Number 8. Baldwin Steam Locomotive, 1920s, the titans of the rails. In the early 1920s, when the heartbeat of nations echoed through the clatter of steel wheels and the hiss of steam, there stood a name that commanded reverence across continents: Baldwin Locomotive Works. At a time when the locomotive was more than just a machine, when it was a living emblem of industry, ambition, and unrelenting motion, Baldwin reigned supreme, forging engines that embodied the spirit of an era driven by iron and fire. The Baldwin steam locomotives of the 1920s were not mere tools of transport, they were mechanical titans, each one a masterpiece of engineering and craftsmanship, built to pull the weight of empires. Forged in Philadelphia's sprawling workshops, these locomotives were the culmination of nearly a century of innovation, engines that blended brute force with intricate precision, capable of hauling hundreds of tons across mountains, plains, and deserts. Their silhouettes became icons of progress, great steel boilers crowned with shining brass domes, drive wheels taller than a man, and pistons that pounded like the hearts of giants. When they roared to life, they breathed clouds of steam that rolled like thunderheads across the horizon, their whistles echoing through valleys as proclamations of human triumph over distance and time. Each locomotive was a product of its purpose. Some were built for freight, massive 282 Mikados and 2-10-2 Santa Fes, engines that dragged endless strings of coal, timber, and steel across the industrial heartlands. Others were designed for passengers, sleek, polished machines like the 462 Pacifics, whose rhythmic drive carried generations across the continent in comfort and speed. But regardless of form, all bore the unmistakable mark of Baldwin: resilience, adaptability, and the strength to endure. As the world shifted from steam to diesel, most locomotives of their kind were scrapped, melted down in the name of progress. Across the United States, in logging camps, sugar plantations, and remote branch lines, they continued to toil long after their supposed obsolescence. In far-off countries, from India to Argentina, from Indonesia to Cuba, Baldwin's creations kept hauling freight, their fireboxes glowing in twilight as monuments to a bygone age. Even now, more than a century since their birth, dozens remain alive and breathing, restored by museums and preservationists, their pistons churning and boilers steaming in living testimony to the endurance of craftsmanship. When one of these engines stirs to life today, the ground still trembles, and the air fills with the scent of coal and oil, a reminder of when power was tangible and progress roared on rails. The Baldwin steam locomotive was not just a machine, it was a declaration that humanity, armed with steel and steam, could bend geography to its will. And though the age of steam has faded into history, these titans endure, defying time itself, their song still echoing along the rails they once ruled. The titans of the rails, immortal engines, forged in fire, driven by purpose and destined never to rust. Number 7. Pelton Water Wheel. Turbines, 1920s. Power from the past. Long before the age of silicon and satellites, before electricity surged from nuclear plants and solar fields, there was a simpler, purer source of power: water, harnessed by ingenuity and transformed into motion. In the rugged mountains and river valleys of the early 20th century, one machine stood as a marvel of mechanical brilliance, capturing the might of rushing streams and turning it into the pulse of progress. That machine was the Pelton water wheel turbine, a design so perfect in its simplicity that it has endured unchanged for more than a century. By the 1920s, the Pelton wheel was already a legend, the brainchild of Lester Allen Pelton, a California inventor who, in the late 19th century, revolutionized hydropower with a deceptively simple idea. Instead of allowing water to push against a flat paddle, Pelton split the stream into twin jets that struck spoon-shaped buckets, each impact converting velocity into rotational force with astonishing efficiency. The result was a turbine that could capture nearly all the kinetic energy of falling water, a mechanical miracle that turned rivers into dynamos. In an era when electricity was still a precious commodity, often reserved for cities while rural communities languished in darkness, the Pelton turbine became the bridge between nature and necessity. Installed in remote mountain stations, mining camps, and industrial mills, these wheels spun tirelessly, driving generators that powered sawmills, smelters, pumps, and electric grids across the American West, Europe, and Asia. Their construction was a blend of elegance and endurance. Cast from iron or steel, mounted on heavy bearings, and fed by meticulously engineered penstocks, They thrived in harsh environments, high-altitude snowfields, deep gorges, and rocky ravines where water fell like thunder. Unlike steam engines, they required no fuel, no fire, no constant tending, only gravity, flow, and the patience of the earth. By the 1920s, the Pelton turbine had become the silent heartbeat of countless hydroelectric stations, its spinning buckets turning water into wattage, lighting homes, driving industry, and igniting economies. And while the world raced ahead, from steam to diesel, from coal to nuclear, many of those early turbines kept spinning, their simple, rugged design immune to obsolescence. A century later, you can still find them working, in small hydro plants tucked into mountain valleys, in historic mining towns now repurposed as heritage sites, and in developing regions where engineers still rely on Pelton's century-old brilliance to bring power to the people. Their polished buckets gleam with age and use, their shafts still humming with the rhythm of falling water, a mechanical hymn to sustainability long before the word was fashionable. The Pelton water wheel is not a relic of a bygone age, but a survivor, proof that true innovation does not expire. It remains as efficient, as elegant, and as enduring as the day it was conceived. In the story of power, it is both ancestor and contemporary, a timeless turbine, still spinning, still giving, still alive. The Pelton wheel, power from the past, flowing endlessly into the present. Number 6. Ingersoll Rand air compressor, 1920s, the industrial workhorse. In the roaring 1920s, while jazz filled the cities and steel redefined skylines, deep beneath the noise and glamour, another rhythm pulsed through the veins of industry, the steady, thunderous heartbeat of compressed air. It was the invisible force that drilled into mountains, riveted ships, powered factories, and carved tunnels through bedrock. And at the center of it all stood one machine whose name became synonymous with endurance and reliability, the Ingersoll Rand air compressor. Long before electricity reached every corner of the industrial world, air compressors were the muscle behind progress. They transformed atmospheric air into raw mechanical energy, feeding power to drills, hammers, pumps, and pneumatic tools, the very implements that built the 20th century. But it was Ingersoll Rand, a company born from the merger of two engineering pioneers, that elevated the compressor from a fragile workshop tool to an indomitable industrial engine. By the 1920s, the company's reciprocating and rotary compressors were everywhere, in mines, factories, rail yards, and shipyards. Forged from heavy cast iron and driven by massive flywheels, these machines weren't built for convenience or speed, but for permanence. Their pistons pounded day and night, turning ambient air into high-pressure power that could break stone, shape steel, or propel machinery with unflinching precision. And while others experimented with complex mechanisms and delicate innovations, Ingersoll Rand relied on something more profound: simplicity married to strength. Engineers designed them for the harshest conditions imaginable. Underground in coal shafts, they shrugged off dust and damp. On construction sites, they braved the scorching sun and freezing snow without hesitation. In factories, they became the backbone of assembly lines, their rhythmic chuffing as essential as the hum of motors or the clang of steel. The company's mantra was durability, and their compressors embodied it with every bolt and bearing. Even as the world marched forward into the age of electric motors and automated systems, the old Ingersoll Rand units refused to fade. Their maintenance was straightforward, their parts replaceable, and their operation nearly immortal. Decades passed, industries changed, wars came and went, and still, these machines breathed life into tools and turbines, supplying the compressed air that industry could not live without. Today, nearly a century later, many of those original 1920s compressors still run. Some restored in museums, others quietly humming in small workshops, sawmills, and heritage mines. Their faded paint and worn plates tell stories of generations of labor, of men and women who trusted their livelihoods to the unwavering rhythm of a machine that simply would not quit. The Ingersoll Rand air compressor is more than an artifact. It is a living testament to industrial craftsmanship, a reminder that true engineering doesn't chase trends, it endures. In an age obsessed with innovation, this relic from the past continues to whisper a simple truth. When built with purpose, even the hardest workhorse never stops running. The Ingersoll Rand air compressor, the breath of industry, still exhaling power after 100 years. Number 5. Ford Model A trucks, 1927. The backbone of a new nation. By the late 1920s, America was in motion. Cities expanding skyward, highways carving across the countryside, and industries humming with new energy. But behind every brick laid, every shipment delivered, and every mile conquered stood an unsung hero, a truck that bore the weight of a nation on its steel frame. The Ford Model AA, introduced in 1927, was more than a machine. It was the backbone of a new industrial America, a workhorse that bridged the age of horse-drawn wagons and the dawn of mechanized logistics. Born from the legacy of Henry Ford's revolutionary Model T, the Model AA represented a bold step beyond personal mobility into the realm of labor and industry. It was designed not for speed or style, but for strength and endurance. A vehicle built to haul, to endure, to serve. With its rugged ladder frame, reinforced axles, and a reliable 4-cylinder engine, it could carry loads up to 1.5 tons, a remarkable feat for its time. In factories, farms, and construction sites, it became the beating heart of America's working class. The Model AA was not glamorous, but it was indispensable. It delivered lumber to growing suburbs, coal to freezing households, produce from farms to city markets. It hauled mail, machinery, and merchandise, turning dirt roads into arteries of commerce. Its simple design made it easy to repair, its parts interchangeable, and its durability unmatched. Mechanics praised it for its straightforward engineering, while owners swore by its unyielding nature. A truck that asked for little and gave everything. Its versatility was its greatest strength. The Model AA came in countless configurations: flatbeds, stake trucks, dump bodies, delivery vans, even firefighting rigs, each one tailored to the needs of a rapidly modernizing nation. Small businesses and large corporations alike embraced it, from rural cooperatives to industrial giants. In an era when the American dream was built not in boardrooms but in barns and workshops, the Model AA was the steadfast companion that made dreams tangible. Even as newer models emerged and technology advanced, the AA refused to fade. Its simplicity allowed it to survive the Great Depression, patched together and repurposed again and again. Many found second lives as farm trucks, logging haulers, or improvised buses, their steel frames enduring long after the factories that forged them had closed. Today, nearly a century later, restored Model AAs still rumble through parades, museums, and vintage rallies, their boxy silhouettes and grumbling engines echoing an age when hard work was measured in miles and muscle. They stand not just as relics of Ford's ingenuity, but as symbols of an era when machines were built with the same resolve as the people who drove them. The Ford Model AA wasn't built to be admired. It was built to serve. And in doing so, it became the unshakable backbone of a nation on the rise. The Ford Model AA truck, the workhorse that carried America into the modern age. Number 4. Allis-Chalmers, 20 to 35. Tractor, 1920s. The Iron Farmer. In the wide-open fields of post-war America, where endless horizons met the sweat of men and the promise of progress, a new kind of machine began to shape the land. Not with the gentle pull of horses, but with the relentless growl of iron and oil. Among the earliest titans of this agricultural revolution stood the Allis-Chalmers 20 to 35, a tractor forged from steel and necessity, built not to impress, but to endure. It was a machine born for the soil, created to tame it, to wrestle with it, and to transform it into the lifeblood of a modern nation. When it first rolled off the line in the early 1920s, the 20 to 35 represented a monumental shift in farming, a declaration that the age of animal power was giving way to the mechanized might of industry. Beneath its solid frame roared a massive four-cylinder engine that delivered 35 horsepower at the belt, a force that could plow through even the most stubborn fields with unyielding determination. Its weight was its weapon, pressing its steel wheels deep into the earth, gripping the soil with the authority of a machine built to rule it. To the farmers who climbed into its iron seat, the 20 to 35 was more than a tool. It was liberation. Gone were the days of exhausting days behind a team of horses, the endless repetition of furrow after furrow carved by muscle and patience. Now, with the turn of a crank and the hiss of fuel, one man could cultivate in hours what once took days, reshaping not just his field but his future. The 20 to 35's rugged simplicity made it beloved across the heartlands. It was engineered to be maintained with wrenches and willpower. Its parts heavy but accessible, its system straightforward and honest. Farmers trusted it because it asked for little more than fuel, oil, and care, and in return, it gave seasons of unflinching labor. Many became fixtures on family farms, passed from father to son, their faded orange paint telling stories of droughts endured, harvests won, and generations raised on the promise of the land. Even as rubber tires and modern comforts began to creep into tractor design, the 20 to 35 refused to be forgotten. Its steel wheels clattered across fields long after newer models arrived, a testament to the unbreakable bond between man and machine forged in the crucible of honest work. Some still run today, restored by collectors who understand that beneath the rust and grime lies the heartbeat of an era when farming was a test of endurance, and every acre turned was a victory against nature's indifference. The Allis-Chalmers 20 to 35 was not a machine of luxury or grace. It was a creature of iron, loud, heavy, unyielding, and in that it found immortality. For those who built their lives from the soil, it was more than a tractor. It was a partner, a warrior, an iron farmer. Number 3, Rhône rotary aircraft engine, 1920s, the engine that still flies. Long before the roar of jet turbines and the hum of modern propellers filled the skies, there was a sound far more primal, the rhythmic, throbbing pulse of a rotary engine spinning through clouds of castor oil and blue smoke. It was the heartbeat of early aviation, a symphony of pistons and motion, and at its center stood the Rhône rotary engine, a masterpiece of French engineering that powered the fragile wooden biplanes of the Great War. Yet, astonishingly, more than a century later, these engines still roared to life, their circular fury echoing through museums and vintage air shows, relics of an age when flight was equal parts courage, craftsmanship, and chaos. The Rhône was born in the crucible of innovation, at a time when flight itself was a miracle, and every design choice carried the weight of life or death. Introduced in the 1910s and refined into the 1920s, it was an elegant yet unconventional solution to the challenges of early aviation. Unlike modern engines, where the crankshaft spins inside a fixed cylinder block, the Rhône's entire engine rotated with the propeller, flinging air across its cylinders for natural cooling. The result was a marvel of simplicity and balance, lightweight, compact, and astonishingly reliable for its era. Its performance made it a legend. In aircraft like the Sopwith Camel, Nieuport 17, and Fokker-Eindecker, the Rhône gave pilots not just thrust, but personality, an engine that seemed alive, pulling and twisting with every maneuver. Its gyroscopic forces made the planes nimble to the right and sluggish to the left, demanding skill and respect from the men who flew them. In the hands of an ace, it was a weapon. In the hands of a novice, a challenge. But what truly sets the Rhône apart is not just its place in history, but its endurance. Long after wars ended and aviation marched into the jet age, a devoted brotherhood of restorers, engineers, and enthusiasts refused to let its legacy fade. They tracked down surviving engines from barns and battlefields, rebuilt them with reverence, and coaxed them back to life. Each ignition a resurrection, each sputter and roar a living memory of the dawn of flight. Today, more than 100 years since its first takeoff, dozens of Rhône engines still run, You can hear them at airfields from England to New Zealand, mounted in carefully restored biplanes, spinning gracefully under the hands of pilots who honor their history with every climb and turn. Their oily scent and rhythmic growl transport onlookers to another century, but the sky was a frontier and every flight was an adventure. The Rhône rotary engine is not just a machine, it's a survivor, a storyteller, a beating heart from aviation's infancy that still flies. In an age of digital precision, it reminds us of a time when flight was raw, visceral, and gloriously human. It was never meant to last this long, and yet, a century later, it still soars. Number 2. Ruston Steamroller, 1920s. Roads built to last, and so were they. In the quiet hum of a distant countryside, where roads still curve through fields and stone villages, there remains a sound from another century. The slow hiss of steam, the chuff of pistons, and the rhythmic grind of iron wheels on gravel. It's the voice of a survivor, the Ruston Steamroller, a machine born in the 1920s, built in an age when roads were more than just infrastructure. They were promises of progress, carved into the earth by men and machines forged from ambition and steel. Ruston and Hornsby, the British engineering powerhouse from Lincoln, was already a name synonymous with endurance when it turned its expertise to the roads. Their steamrollers were not flashy or fast, but they were magnificent in their simplicity, towering beasts of cast iron and brass, powered by boilers and courage, driven by men who understood every groan and sigh of the engine beneath them. These machines rolled through the interwar years with a singular purpose: to tame the land, compress the earth, and pave the arteries of a modern world. In an era before diesel engines took command, steam was still king, and the Ruston rollers were among the most reliable subjects in its realm. They worked tirelessly, flattening dirt tracks into solid foundations, pressing crushed stone into the backbone of highways that would carry the lifeblood of commerce, community, and change. Every revolution of their great wheels was a stroke of permanence, every puff of white vapor a declaration that civilization was advancing, 1 mile at a time. But what makes the Ruston Steamroller remarkable isn't just the roads it built, it's the road it has traveled through time. While countless machines of its generation were melted down or left to rust, many Rustons endured. Their massive boilers, once fired by coal and sweat, still hold pressure today. Their iron wheels still turn. Restorers and collectors across Britain, Europe, and even parts of Asia have lovingly restored them to working glory, parading them at vintage rallies and heritage fairs where their engines roar to life once more, thrilling crowds with the raw spectacle of living history. To see one in motion today is to witness the spirit of the industrial age, slow, deliberate, and powerful. Each hiss of steam carries the memory of roads built by hand and machine in harmony, of a time when craftsmanship mattered more than convenience, and when durability was not a feature but a philosophy. These steamrollers were never meant to be disposable. They were built to serve, to endure, and in their unyielding persistence, they outlasted the very world that made them. The Ruston Steamroller is more than an antique. It is a monument to endurance, a living testament to a time when progress was heavy, hot, and hewn from iron. The roads they built have changed, but the rollers themselves, they're still rolling. Number 1. Witte diesel engine, 1920s, the last of the line. In the shadow of America's roaring 20s, a decade defined by jazz, automobiles, and an industrial heartbeat that never seemed to rest, there was a quieter revolution humming in the fields and workshops, the steady thrum of the Witte diesel engine. It did not roar like a locomotive or shine like a new automobile, yet its low, deliberate rhythm became the pulse of progress in the forgotten corners of rural America. Witte Engine Works, founded in Kansas City, was not a household name, but it earned the trust of farmers, millers, and craftsmen who needed power that would not fail when the wind died or the grid faltered. In an age still caught between the horse and the high-voltage line, the Witte diesel was a revelation, a compact, rugged machine capable of driving pumps, saws, generators, and threshers with unflinching consistency. Where other engines choked on neglect or harsh conditions, the Witte thrived. its cast-iron frame and slow-turning flywheels built for a lifetime rather than a season. Unlike the flashy gasoline engines that required constant tuning, the Witte's simplicity was its strength. It started on kerosene or diesel, burned efficiently, and ran cool and clean. Its engineers valued practicality over novelty, designing an engine that could be repaired with hand tools and patience rather than specialized parts. In remote homesteads and dusty workshops, this reliability was gold, the difference between crops saved and lost, between work done and work delayed. Through the Great Depression, these engines soldiered on, powering the machinery of survival when capital was scarce and replacements impossible. And even as electric lines spread across the country and diesel technology leapt forward in trucks, ships, and tractors, the humble Witte continued to do its job, faithfully, quietly, without complaint. What makes the Witte truly remarkable is not just its longevity, but its endurance into the modern era. A century later, collectors and preservationists still run them, not as museum pieces, but as functioning machines. Some are still hard at work on farms, pumping water or driving mills, their rhythmic chug echoing across the same landscapes they once helped tame. Their paint may have faded, but the heart within, the old single-cylinder diesel, still beats strong, a mechanical testament to an era when "built to last" was more than a slogan. In the grand parade of industrial history, the Witte was never the largest, the loudest, or the most advanced, but it was among the most faithful, a companion to the farmer, a servant to the craftsman, a survivor of every storm. It is, in every sense, the last of the line. Not just a machine, but a legacy of endurance, simplicity, and the quiet dignity of purpose-built engineering that refuses to die. The Witte diesel engine still runs, and with every turn of its flywheel, it whispers the story of a century's worth of work.